So in primary school, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. In high school, I had aspirations of being a journalist. But back in the year 1991, after watching something for merely 30 seconds, suddenly I wanted to be a barbarian. Hi there YouTube, it's a very cold Al here from the blog onemanmanyplans.com.au, and of course this YouTube channel of the same name. Cold because we're smack bang in the middle of an Australian winter, and one of those days too where I got to the car up at the driveway this morning and there was ice on the windscreen, but ice all over it. I mean, this is around 5 in the morning, so that's kind of a given for this time of year and that time of morning, but interesting to find out that my Mazda now has a slushy button. So as you can appreciate, the One Man Many Plans base HQ here, aka my tiny little shed where I do most of my filming, is pretty cold by comparison. But hey, we're not talking about the weather. We are taking the reminiscing train back to the year 1991, where I remember exactly where I was when I first saw this incredible 30-second ad. And it's incredible because once upon a time, I could tell you just about every country around the world and every capital city of said country. And there's a fair chance I'd know the currency too of said country. I can barely remember that list, but I remember exactly what I was doing and where I was when I saw this ad for HeroQuest.
HeroQuest. Deep inside another dimension, face battling barbarians and evil magic on a quest for adventure in a maze of monsters. This is HeroQuest, the fantasy adventure game where winning means mastering the arts of combat.
I'll use my broadsword.
And magic.
Fire of wrath.
Discover traps and enemies. Uncover secret doors. Once you get into it, you'll never be the same. HeroQuest.
Now can you see why I wanted to be a barbarian?
Face battling barbarians.
It was school holidays, it was 1991, I was at my grandparents' place, it would have been Saturday morning, watching cartoons such as Masked Crusaders.
Masked Crusaders, working overtime, fighting crime.
And Transformers.
The Transformers, more than meets the eye.
And Thundercats. And Brave Star. And all of those amazing Saturday morning classics. And on top of that, being exposed to so many ads in between each and every cartoon. Ads for the latest doll, ads for the latest action figure, ads for the latest vehicle that you needed for your action figure, the latest G.I. Joe Super Battle Cruiser or whatever it was. And then came the HeroQuest ad, which literally grabbed an 11-year-old me by the shirt front and didn't let go for 30 seconds. I was absolutely hooked. Since then, I'd only seen it a couple of times, but that one viewing was enough to make me go, I need to get this game. And that's what I did. For the next few weeks, I saved up my pocket money, which was about $5 or $10 a week around that time, until I had enough to go out and get myself a copy of a game that, oh my God, did I adore. Now seriously, I don't think this highly influential TV commercial landing on my grandma's old TV back in the year of 1991 during school holidays could have come at a better time for me personally, because at 11, I had a few years of reading these books, these fighting fantasy books, and I've talked about them at length, how much I appreciated them back then and how I'm certainly appreciating finding them again and rereading them in 2024. But HeroQuest, the board game, for me at the time, seemed to be the natural and logical next step in my love of role-playing games, because suddenly you went from books to the role-playing game. Suddenly you went from 2 dice to a whole heap of dice. Suddenly the character in your book, you could choose which character you wanted, be it the elf or the barbarian or the dwarf or the wizard, which wasn't something you could do in a fighting fantasy book until the very, very last few books released, I think. At least, I know there was one Zagor book where you could pick what kind of character you were, but for the most part, you were just the hero of the book. The HeroQuest board, well, you could pick whoever you liked. And the thing that I really appreciated the most was maps in the book. There's no maps in HeroQuest, but there is the work of art that is the board. And the board certainly is a work of art. Over time, I have to admit, I did lose pieces. Naturally, it happens. Teenagers, messy rooms, those kinds of things. The dog chewed a couple of the dice. I think I killed a few orcs by accidentally stepping on them and then went, well, that piece is broken, that can go in the bin. Not really thinking that one day it might become a collector's item or, I should hold on to them or fix them or repair them or the like. But the board stayed with me for years, and I used it for just about anything, mostly as a miniature stand because, hey, it's a great backdrop, but just about any kind of game, tabletop game, trying things out. The board was ready to go, and boy, did it look fantastic. But let's not forget the incredible furniture pieces that came with it too. And I just remember opening up the box and the great delight of punching out doorway frames from the cardboard and slotting them into the plastic and putting the plastic bits with the cardboard bits for all the furniture, and those tiny little skulls that had slot into things like the desks. They were so cool. And then you had the minis, which were just awesome. The full heroes in red. You had orcs, you had goblins, you had the Chaos Warrior. How good, I mean, it's very dated now, and they could do so much better, especially with miniature design and, you know, state of minis now and 3D printing and that like. But at the time, the Gargoyle was fearsome. Let's be honest. He was a pretty cool bit of kit from 1991. And while I relented for the first couple of weeks of HeroQuest ownership, eventually the temptation became too strong and I did start painting up the pieces. I'd like to say I finished them. I'd like to tell you that they all looked amazing, but this was me at 11 and I never finished anything. So I got a third of the pieces done. Half the heroes. The Barbarian was the first piece. Of course, I painted his hair jet black. I couldn't wait to, you know, get him up and running, because who didn't want to be the Barbarian?
Face battling barbarians.
Big, strapping, absolute man mountain, great sword ready to cleave in orcs and goblin heads. Why wouldn't I paint that first? I remember I loved painting the mummy and the zombie and the skeleton. The orcs, not so much. I'd love painting orcs now. But back in the day, it was like, yeah, I'll get to you guys eventually. But that was the extra appeal of having this, the fact that people did paint the pieces. And some, like I'd see these pictures in gaming magazines like White Dwarf back in the day, some did an absolutely amazing job. I tried to emulate it. My skills weren't that great. They still aren't now. But it was still fun, because you took the board game and you went, okay, not only can I play this, but I can certainly paint everything in it. And I think that was just that extra element that made me just go, I'm loving this already. Let's break out the paints and let's give these pieces an extra bit of life here. After HeroQuest came Advanced HeroQuest, which I never really got into. Plus, there was a couple of expansions, I think, for both the normal vanilla-flavoured HeroQuest and also the Advanced series, but I never really explored those. For me, just the base game was more than enough. The pieces, plenty to paint, like I said, that I never actually finished. So I left it there. Although a couple of years later, I stumbled across a copy of the game Space Crusade, $40 I think it was, and I went, oh, okay, it's a game with minis and dice and combat and it's set in space. What could possibly go wrong here? And I think that was my general introduction to the world of Warhammer 40k. Although I never actually saw the ad for this until recently. I've got to say, it's nowhere near as good as the HeroQuest one. In fact, getting into the lore and knowing as much and loving as much of Warhammer 40k as I do, and I've read plenty of the books and podcasts and printed the minis and all that kind of stuff, this does look a little bit janky from, I'm guessing, 1993, but see what you think.
Space Crusade takes you into warp space to fight the force of chaos. Deep in a parallel universe where nightmares are real. Space Crusade, the ultimate adventure game, where you must use all your skill and weaponry
Plasma gun! Dreadnought!
to battle through infested starships and win the highest rank. The ultimate encounter is here. Space Crusade, now with a new adventure pack.
Yeah, that Gene Stealer does not instill any kind of fear in me whatsoever. But hey, that's the technology that you're working with back in the early 90s, and obviously it's a lot easier to find a buff barbarian than it is to create a Space Marine or a Stardy suit that actually looks pretty good. And as much as I loved opening up a game of Space Crusade and playing as the Blood Angels, that was my favourite team, it just wasn't as good as HeroQuest. Let's be honest. They tried, it was okay. For those that love the space genre, I guess fantastic, you finally had an option. But I don't know, the minis didn't look too good to me. The little Gretchens with the blunderbusses, I don't know what that was about. It just didn't hold the appeal as HeroQuest. I'm glad I bought it, I'm glad I tried it. But yeah, it just, as board games go, HeroQuest was number one. I don't think Space Crusade was anywhere near it. Now, since those heady days of the 90s, yes, of course, I've always wanted a copy of HeroQuest just to reminisce about. And I hate to admit this, but I think it's only fair. There was a time when I was op shopping, and I do like the occasional op shop and plenty of bargains in there. And I stumbled across a full set of HeroQuest for $3. And I passed on it. I don't know why. I just, in my mind, I've just gone, yeah, that's cool. Do I want it? No, maybe I'll come back in a week and I'll grab it then. Of course, in a day, it disappeared. Someone just got the absolute bargain of a lifetime. And I still kick myself to this day over the fact that that's a $3 bargain I'll never get. But, of course, if you're a HeroQuest fan, you would have relished the news a few years ago that they actually re-released it. Yes, a new version of HeroQuest, which I haven't got into for one specific reason, and that's the price. I think the last time I priced it was like $130, which honestly, in the world of Games Workshops, is probably pretty affordable, but it's not affordable to me. And I just knew that if I spent $130 on this to go and buy the latest and greatest version, maybe my kids would get interested. Maybe, but it certainly wouldn't be good or wouldn't feel as reminiscing as me stumbling over a $10 copy, or even better, a $3 copy in an op shop somewhere of the original. Whether they'd painted the pieces up or not, I'd strip them back and start again, just to have that game and especially that board on deck. Another thing I didn't think of with the re-release of the new one was, of course, that they've updated the ad. And suddenly we've gone so far from 90s technology.
Zargon has returned, but light always follows darkness, and the four of you hold the key to saving the realm. The barbarian, the mightiest of warriors. The wizard, the wielder of arcane power. The dwarf, resilient fighter and expert craftsman. The elf, master of both the sword and magic. Your quest is to put an end to Zargon's reign of evil once and for all. The quest is calling. HeroQuest. The quest is calling.
Seriously, bless you, YouTube, for just being a place where you can suddenly discover all of those things you'd either forgotten about or weren't aware of at the time, even if it was a pretty rubbish Space Crusade commercial from the early 90s. But that one actually looked pretty good, the latest HeroQuest version. There you go. Were you, like me, influenced by that commercial back in 1991? Did you, like me, want to become a barbarian when you were 11 years old? Did you have a copy? Do you still have a copy? Did the dog chew the dice? Is it missing the pieces? Did you come across a $3 bargain in an op shop somewhere and kick yourself because you said no to it? Did you buy my $3 bargain? Love to hear from you. Comment below. Love you to like and subscribe. Thanks so much for joining me in my latest reminiscing session. And wish me luck, because I like finding fantasy books and like sort of restocking my bookshelf all of these decades later. If I do come across a cheap copy of HeroQuest anywhere, you know I am going to absolutely bag it. My kids probably won't play it more than once, but I'll be loving the reminiscing and especially that board.